All right. Welcome to the Lead Generation World Live podcast. If you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube, welcome, welcome, welcome. As you know, this is live, obviously. So we do see your comments as well. So if you want to say what's up in the comments on YouTube or LinkedIn, please do let us know you're listening in. We're going to be talking really all things sort of call center related today. Kind of makes sense since we're leading into Contact.io, which is August 30th through September 1st in Denver, Colorado. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say it's a pretty awesome show, right, Brent? But it's a great show because it really focuses on, performance calls. So whether that's driving inbound, click to call or pay per call campaigns, or making outbound calls on real-time leads or age data, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. But it all resulting in hopefully a sale. So it's not customer service related. It's really all performance call center sales related to the call center. So if you're interested in going, actually, before we get going, I do have a discount code that I'll show later too in the broadcast, but I got a $200 off code here. If you haven't already registered and you're listening in, it's right there for you. C232. That is a 00 and D. So you can use that and get $200 off your registration, and I'll pop that up later too. So anyway, Brent, what's up, my friend? I'm glad you were able to join me again. Brent Biggs, you're from Datascore. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. And by the way, I'm excited for Denver also. That was the first show I went to when, the COVID ended. And it was great. I highly recommend it. It was the perfect size with the right people there. I think every show has its pros and cons, but it was a great kickoff to the fall winter trade shows. So I'm super excited to see you there.
Yeah, I'm glad you thought it was great. I mean, we try our best to bring brands as well. A lot of brands coming from across multiple verticals. I mean, we've got guys, like from DirecTV, Spectrum, mortgage companies, insurance companies. I mean, we've even got, I saw the other day, there's about 3 or 4 people coming from one of the largest utility companies in Florida. It's a multi-billion-dollar company that's looking to figure out how to monetize their phone calls with their installs and doing some different things. So, I mean, they're going to it's going to be a field day for them because they're going to come away with so many ideas of how to potentially further monetize their conversations with their clients. And so it's going to be pretty cool for them. But yeah, for those, service providers and everybody else, getting in front of companies like that is going to be huge. And so I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And thanks for supporting it too, by the way. You guys are sponsoring the networking lounge, which is inside the exhibit hall. And we've got a bunch of tables there that people can actually reserve. Once you register, you get into the app, and there's a book a table functionality in there, and you can book a table for 30 minutes or whatever and have your meetings there versus trying to find something, a table or a hallway or whatever it is.
The bar.
In outside, the bar, which gets quite crowded, and so obviously we've got a fully hosted bar in the exhibit hall too, so you can have your meetings, book a table right there in the Datascore lounge. So pretty cool stuff too. So I appreciate you supporting the event.
Of course.
Hey, one thing is, what happened to 6-year-old Brent photo, or 8-year-old Brent photo on LinkedIn, dude?
I've got a group. I have.
You finally grew up.
Yeah, all of a sudden I got old. No, it's funny. John LeBlanc, our VP of Sales, kept harassing me about the photo. I thought the photo was funny. I was going to do a photo with like a 1980s cell phone as my next one. I don't know if you remember those rare ones where they, the billboards. That was going to be my next one, but I got overridden by everybody else. So I guess it was time to grow up. I get last year.
I thought it was very proper, man. You had a bow tie. What was that? What? What
I
grade
was
was
very
that?
serious back then. I think there's a picture before I got baptized, and
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I was very serious. I was going to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Actually, was set to go to law school before I started. My first company. We talked about that last time, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, okay. Well, I mean, listen, it still looks professional. I like it, but I was just wondering, what happened to little Brent, Uh, but it's good to see it's good. It's good to see you,
I,
man.
I,
Well,
I think
yeah,
I think that TC posting things on LinkedIn is what aged me. I'm just kidding.
that's yeah, exactly. So just to give a quick background for those that don't know you or Datascore, just to give some context about sort of what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. And by the way, those that are listening in, please participate. By no means are we necessarily experts. You know how I like to roll on these podcasts, which is really just conversational and just bring up subjects and talk about them. Usually I think I get a lot out of it, and I think those that listen to it get a lot out of it. But so as we talk along about different subjects, please feel free to participate. So putting that aside, give us a little context of Datascore, so we can, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, so data score, we're focusing on answering the who, the what, and the when, right? So who should you not call because they're not going to be interested in your product? When should you call them? The best time and day, and pretty much what should you take to them, or what widget are you selling them? And we use machine learning in that process to get and maintain high connection rates. Depending on the data source, we're anywhere from 25% connect to, did a Facebook leads for a Medicare company, and we were at like 60% connect rate. And it's about just continually optimizing the process all the way through. And then with the connection, we send it to wherever you want. We can go to a soundboard, we go to a bot, we can go to your call center. Just kind of depends. But the key thing is focusing on improving the experience for the consumer that's receiving the call, so they're receiving a relevant call, that they're going to buy your product.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a big, like, you said relevant call, which is at its core some of the pain of this whole, not even this industry of the world, because it's not even fair to like target an industry per se, because everybody's trying to make a phone call to somebody, for to either follow up with a client, consumer, whatever, but they're all getting tainted by either spam calls, unwanted calls, and unfortunately those seem to be the majority of calls being received sometimes these days. And so for those that are legitimate, like yourself, calling for clients, whatever it is, it makes it almost impossible, unless you're doing things more intelligently like you guys are doing. But part of the problem, now, is the whole DID, spam, labeling and that sort of thing. And I'm not sure anybody's sort of figured out how to, from a legitimate standpoint, if you're making legitimate calls, how to navigate that, right? They've talked about rotation of numbers and all this sort of stuff. What's your take on this whole thing?
That's interesting, because I think one of your sessions that you have at the show is about, the subject matter, and is it about, mitigation or
Yeah.
call branding registration, right? I think that's the subject matter on it.
Yep. You're right.
So,
Yep.
my take on it is that it's not fair to some brands. Like we just helped out a company that, they're completely running, branded Facebook campaigns to their offer, for their product. It goes to their call center, and they're just constantly tagged as scam spammed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, in a way, it's a question of like, you're not a spammer. So when you start to dig into it with them so that you can understand, their operations, it's like, well, you're not a spammer, but you're acting like a spammer. It's a problem. And they're sort of trapped, because really, what alternative do you have than some platform that's a derivative of, Asterix and Vici? And, back when, I think everyone knows that I was,
And just so people don't know, that's a baseline dialer that people build on top of, right?
yeah.
Of each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and it's a powerful tool for outbound dialing, but it's got patterns and algorithms been associated with you know spam calls, right? I think a lot of bad operations use it because it's cheap. It's a great platform. We use it for the inbound calls for some of our customers, so it works out. I think it's a great platform, but there's really no alternative for them. And so then the solution that seems to be, or the new method out there seems to be even to perpetuate acting like a spammer because you're snowshoe spamming now. And my background, I've said this a lot, and I think people get sick of me talking about the parallels that I see between what happened in email and what's happening here. And back in email, I built an email platform that would deliver billions of emails a month, and it focused on the same thing. We just built an engine that we were able to source tons of IPs from around the world, and we just wrote a rotation from it and basically snowshoe spam. I was younger, so we don't do that
Yeah.
now. But what's the alternative? How do you change your practice and still generate the same amount of sales and be profitable? And it's kind of this trap because where is the solution out there? And so that's where I felt like when I came in and I looked at the problem, I wanted to solve it using machine learning and really change the way that you dial while and having high connectivity so you can maintain your sales and increase your sales. I think that it's a hack. And not everyone has to agree with me. The reason
Yeah.
why it's a hack is that it doesn't address the problem. It tries to obfuscate the problem and get around it. And it's a solution that's not going to last forever. And I think it's just logical. There is at some point you can only consume so many phone numbers that a carrier is going to give you. If you're on, Peerless Network or whatever, there's only so many phone numbers they have. And if you're rotating every 25 phone calls in a local region and there's 100 other people, well, at some point there's no more phone numbers, right? I mean, right? I mean, that's
Right.
just like,
Right.
so I don't believe it's a solution. I think the solution is I really believe the solution is the way we're approaching it is by being smarter and using machine learning to engage with the consumer differently, and taking the steps that continually lead you toward higher connectivity. And part of that is creating we have something called an instant lead score, but creating an instant lead score so you're not calling the people who aren't going to buy your product, and that cuts out a lot of things. And even if you just start scoring carriers, one part of our formula is how we rate carriers and the attributes we find about carriers. And there are just some carrier. I mean, there's a very simple report to pull. Take your dollar logs, look at your call duration, go to some place. The Blacklist Alliance is who we use. We love them. Append the carrier, then look at a report and see which ones actually produce long duration. And you'll find there's carriers those customers that pay for that service don't produce the duration of calls. And so you start to cut this, even optimize there. It leads to longer duration calls, longer talk times, and better connectivity. And so I believe that just being smarter about the way you're doing it will begin to align with the objectives, of whatever the government wants or whatever the consumer wants or whatever. It's going to start to align better with them. And I think that's the solution. But
Yeah.
I do understand the need, because how do you fix it, or how do you find a solution to reach the customers? And I do understand the DID rotation. I'm just kind of curious, like, how long will it last?
Yeah. It's like a mathematical equation we can figure out. Like, what is it? 10 digits with how many different variations can there be? And then if each one is, hit with a spam tag, for how long are they hit for? Are they hit for 6 weeks,
Yeah.
6 months? How long does a spam tag like get attached to a phone number? Do you have any idea?
I have no clue. I think
Yeah.
there's supposed to be some cool off period before
Right.
reassigning them to another customer. I don't know if it's 6 weeks or 6 months. I don't think it's 6 months, but I know there's some period. But yeah,
Yeah, so
I'm not
I thought
familiar
there
with
was
that.
too. But yeah, so there's only a certain amount of variations, if people are just doing that rotating through numbers. I mean, obviously it's millions, but it's funny that to think about it that way. As far as uh the DID hack, and then the carriers that you were mentioning.
Yeah.
My guess, and I guess, do those carriers? I'm sure that sort of the toggle sort of probably changes to some extent, right? Are they sort of? Do you see fluctuations in that duration of calls by carrier fluctuate from, I don't know, month to month or week to week? Are they also like pulling strings on their side
Well,
potentially?
so it's a really interesting. That's actually a really good question to isolate. Like, is it AT&T or Verizon or whatever
Yeah,
causing the problem? Well, what I found in the data is that it's usually smaller subset carriers, right? Regional carriers that you find this, because obviously if you have Verizon Wireless and that's how it comes back, as the carrier information. I mean, you can't cut out Verizon Wireless,
right.
from there. So you have to dissect that data a little bit more. What we found is like more regional care, like it's AT&T, but then it's a subset of AT&T in some
Yeah,
region that they acquired at some point that you can begin to cut out, but it's routing through AT&T. Um, and we saw an average call duration. Well, actually, I'll kind of add on that. We saw an average call duration. Our average call duration right now for our customers, probably not on the best data, is about 32 seconds. And we've gotten the average call duration as high as 1 minute and 1. Now, through optimization for the
mhm,
customer. No, it's pretty fascinating. And I think it's an easy thing to look at and just look at the data. You can now use I started using the Chat GBT, what is it called? Code interpreter.
yeah.
And
Code
just,
interpreter.
yeah. I mean, try
Oh
that.
yeah,
Put it
that's
in there.
great.
Yeah, try that. That's a whole nother discussion about how
Yeah,
amazing that is. But I mean, throw it in, upload it, throw it in there, ask it some questions, and just see what ChatGPT comes back. But you'll find a pattern that there's just some carriers not worth calling.
yeah,
I guess that it then leads to the question of like, should you buy them, right? And then do we all only call AT&T, Verizon? I mean, there's at some point, you got to call
yeah.
some other things, but
It's it it's crazy because it goes back to your first like comment about that one client that's not a spammer. Like
right.
they're legitimately calling their people that are reaching out to them. These are legitimate people interested in their product, but the way they dial, for good or bad, I mean, all they're doing is calling, and calling. Are they calling too much? I don't know, but you know, um, it goes back to those good guys, so quote unquote, that are getting hurt because of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And it's a bummer to see how this continues to evolve. I do want to say one thing real quick though on that code interpreter. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
If you don't know, I mean, people listening, you could throw in the Excel file, and really, what I've done is I've just said, analyze this data and tell me what are the top 5 like questions I should ask about it. And then it'll tell me what you should like. Oh, you should look at this. You should look at that. Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and do that? And then why don't you put a graph together? And it just takes it all apart. And you can just sit there forever and just have that thing, dialing into that data, which would take me never. And I've said this before because I just I couldn't sit there with a V lookup and try. I just not that sophisticated with Excel. You know what I mean? Or have whatever that software is that I can't think of right now, that will parse out data and gosh, it's at the tip of my tongue. But I just didn't have it. So having this ability to do that is so powerful and
It also
so awesome.
does a really good job with data hygiene. That's just hygiening the data, lining up the columns. Because I mean, good data and garbage in, garbage out, right? So everything's got to start with like the hygiening and ETL process. But
Will it? I've never asked it, but will it take? Will it fix a piece of data and
yep.
reproduce it in another Excel file and spit that out? Okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
haven't tried that. Yeah,
I
that's
think
for
to
sure.
really take like a Excel file where let's say you've got a bunch of lead sources, right? And they're
Yeah,
all, phone, first name, last name, and then it's first name, phone over here, and it's Genai tokens in some other column. Just put them all in together and ask it to line up the columns and merge, and then just say like perform standard, data hygiene on it, and it'll just walk you through the process, and you
yeah,
get an amazing file back. So it takes, what would take me hours done in,
Yeah.
minutes. So it's pretty
So
cool.
cool. Yeah, it's so cool. So going back to that, I mean, do you have any? I mean, this is kind of a stupid question because I think the answer is probably no. I mean, is there any like clear pathway for brands that are calling on legitimate data to get a hold of them?
I mean, not to sound like a, not to sound like a salesperson here, which I'm not. I mean,
Is-
I believe it just comes down, you have to change your practice. And if the
Yeah,
DNA, I've said this before, if the DNA of the software you're on is designed to support spamming, then the first thing that a data scientist is going to do is take all these calls that are coming in that are spam and build a model that looks for those
yeah.
patterns. And you're just getting caught up in that. And
Mm,
by the way, this particular client I'm talking about is very low volume. And so it's not like they're doing a lot of volume, but their solution from their dialer company was to rotate their DIDs more, to
yeah,
get. So that's the only thing they have as an option to do that until they came to us. And then, we've worked with them, and they're not having the problem now, and they're getting very high connectivity and keeping their call center, active. So,
yeah,
but I mean, it's just a different approach. I mean, that's all that it is, right? We just took a very different approach to the problem, which has taken a while for. I mean, it's challenge we have is that it's so foreign to people that it's just easier to do it this way. I mean, like the
mm,
current way, and it takes a bit of like transition and kind of rethinking to adopt a new way. So, I understand it. And I think that's what we struggled with last year, was trying to create associations between, like, okay, well, you're doing list mix, but this is how you do it here. And then people can't understand, like, why do you call people once a week or only every 3 days? Or, it's mind
yeah,
boggling to them. They're like, we're not going to have enough people on the phone. And then you have too many people on the phone. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
but
crazy. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, my suggestion is just start asking. It's just as simple it is, with the what Chat GPT has out now, you can become your own little data analyst and, export log files and kind of, append them with different attributes and just start diving into it. The answer is there, right? You
Yeah,
know, what's your call count to carrier? How many call counts does it hit a diminishing return if you had the values of, like, hey, each call cost me X to make,
yeah,
right? And there's some telco rate, there's some usage of phone number, of DID, and come up with that formula and put that into Chat GPT, and you could quickly figure out, like, you know with some clients we've seen, it's 3 calls, and then there's a loss of revenue, right? Because they're calling, they're not connecting, but they're consuming resources, so they're losing money. Then they hand that off to us, and we do our thing. And with some other clients, it's 18. So it's just, you kind of got to dive in and really start to understand your data. And I think Chat GPT, I mean, we're talking all about Chat GPT. I'm really excited.
sure.
This did all weekend. I barely slept. I was just like with this,
No,
but
I get it. I get it. It's awesome when you can dive into this stuff and get the answer so quickly when
mm,
before it was impossible
no,
almost,
it
you
was,
know?
well, it was time consuming. I was working on
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
optimizing a tax client, and I think normally I would spend about 4 hours and on it, and then it took 10 minutes. So I was
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what I'm gonna do I had all this free time again.
No, it's excellent. And you're giving up some pretty good tips today too, which is awesome. Um yeah, so we talked about uh really some compliance issues that have been coming
Mm,
up over the last number of months with this FTC NPRM, and what they're sort of making some suggestions towards and all that sort of stuff. One of the things was for what basically single match leads, right?
mhm.
So the brand has to be the same, and it has to go straight to the brand. Can't be sold multiple to multiple brands. Not sure if that's going to actually happen or not. Certainly, again, not an expert here, but I think the individuals that are experts are still not not confident that that's going to happen. But one of the other things was on target, and I can't remember the phrases that they used off the top of my head. Maybe somebody listening in on LinkedIn can help me out here. But where basically a lead has to be sold or go to a company that is servicing whatever was on that web page. You know, if it's a mortgage and it has to go to a mortgage, it's going to a mortgage company. It's going to be a mortgage call. It can't be a solar call or insurance call or, you know, anything off topic, basically.
Yeah.
Which I think makes sense. And frankly, I thought that was sort of the rule of thumb for many years, to be honest with you. But what are the carriers like? What are you seeing like carriers sort of do in regards to these types of items?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we're built on Twilio, and I have a great relationship with that team over there. We have a weekly call, and it's I'm no expert, by the way, and I don't even claim to know. I'm only going to just tell you what I'm told and given direction, and what we're doing with our clients. Whether I agree with it or not, it's just the lay of the land. So we've had situations or a situation that arise, and we submitted the information to Twilio, and this person in particular signed up at a, I'm just going to make up some stuff, right?
Sure.
So they signed up at an insurance site, and they're getting an offer for solar. And the first thing that came back was, this is off topic, like regardless of the, and I said, well, technically this is, I mean, this is legal. They consented. There's the partners page. And so several phone calls, because more I'm inquisitive. It's like, what's the thinking of the carriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, Twilio's, the grill in the room when it comes to, being a carrier. So they're connected. And what was explained to me was that whether it's legal or not, the direction of what type of traffic is going to be permitted, that would be, like you said, off topic, but more of where we have to be in the next, 6 to 12 months is single, so I call it single consent. I'm sure there's some
Single consent. Yeah.
Single consent. And they want to see that it's, if you're selling for Bob's Solar, that it's Bob Solar that the person saw, they consented, and you're calling Bob Solar, your branded call is Bob, the person answering the phone is Bob, and they're selling them for Bob. And that, it was made clear that we have to start driving our customers toward that, because regardless of whatever the government says, the carriers are going to start enforcing that. And so of course that was like, well, how are they going to do that? And I guess it's know your customer, and they'll start challenging, and they'll start, asking for information is what I'm told. I think it's a good practice anyways. The challenges, and what I explained to them is, some of our customers that's dealing with opt-in age data that they've purchased over years, that we're driving in, that data through us is driving more sales than their fresh data. And that's a huge investment, because they're starting at zero again, and this particular client invested $6.5 million in this data set, now they're back at zero. I mean, you can't just ask that and start enforcing it tomorrow. So, but it was made clear that at least in this world of dealing with tier one carriers, this is where we have to go. So we've started working with our clients, and I have some great data partners, and started getting them transitioning to the single consent. So that's what we're seeing. It was made clear to us that, they will challenge Datascore to see the consent, and we will need to provide that in a timely manner. And I also noticed that their use of honeypots seem to be increasing dramatically.
What do you mean by that?
So,
I mean, I've heard that before, but
yeah. So it took me a while to kind of click, because I can be a little defensive about it, being an old school emailer. I always think they're coming for you, but in this particular case, it they said, look, you keep hitting our honeypots. Well, first of all, I didn't realize Twilio had honeypots. So that was the first discovery. And then I was like, well, they have opt-in, they have opt-in, they have opt-in, they have opt-in. And in this particular case, they have an opinion that opt-in has to be either rescinded by the consumer or that they switch their phone number, right? So we checked the reassigned, .us, the reassigned database. It doesn't, the number's not swapped. But their point is that regardless if that's an opinion of an attorney or not, that these honeypots that are getting hit are, let's say they're 12 months old, right? Now there's no consent for it. And so there's just more of this, like, these are on the DNC, you shouldn't be calling them. There's more of these sort of, what I think, traps, or not traps. Traps is such a negative word, but monitoring tools out there to just see if you're being compliant, and whether we hit it or not, or whether they just took the call logs and ran it against, to see if that number existed or not, I don't know. I don't think that Twilio would lie to me. I believe them 100%. So our resolution was, okay, well, after a certain date, we just need to use the DNC, regardless of whatever legal opinion exists here, and regardless if it's true. It's clear that to make age data work, there's just certain new things we have to do.
Okay, let me explain this to a layman over here on this side of the screen. Regarding the honeypot term, is that like a sandbox, or is that like the DNC lit? Like, what is that? What do you mean by honeypot?
Well, you know what? That's funny, because I actually wrote a mitigation plan this morning. So I will actually read to you what it is defined as. If you give me 1 second.
Yeah. I'm curious to know how they look at that.
So let's see here. Okay. So this was how I kind of, like, it clicked in my head what their issue was or is, and it's a valid issue. So we needed to deal with this, but it is a fictitious or decoy telephone number that is set up to attract spammers, telemarketers, or unwanted calls.
Got it.
So
okay, got it. So they're seeding. They could be seeding numbers all over the place, right? Just to monitor, where things are going, how things are being distributed out there in the world.
Yeah.
And somehow those numbers are getting mixed into some sets of age data that your clients have sent to you, or some form or fashion.
Correct.
And so, got it. Okay. Yeah. So how do you? So yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead with your question. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, so that age data, is, how do you sort of define age data first off?
I mean, that's up to our customers to define. I guess me personally, I would say that it's greater than 90 days. It's kind of an age. I think that.
And initially had consent in there, but somehow, and then, okay. Yeah, it's a tricky thing, because I see like a lot of the, it's one thing if you have a brand that owns that age data, right? That wants to, come back around to somebody that they've already opted into and all this sort of stuff. I suppose the real issue potentially is those age data brokers, right?
Yeah, and this data set, it came from one of the off-topic sites, and also some of it came from the brokers, right?
Yeah.
And with, I want to say this politically correct, but maybe you don't know what you're really getting. And in this particular client, they were buying from a particular company. And as I got a hold of the data and the analysis that we did, we determined that the data was, I like to say, kind of cut. They thought they were buying one thing, they bought that for a while, and then there's some clear patterns that occur in the data set where you can tell that it started getting cut in with some illegitimate stuff to increase their profit margins. So for us is what we're doing is we're looking for that kind of stuff when we take that data on and cutting that, the cut stuff out to make the data
Trying to
more
get it,
clear.
trying to
Yeah,
identify and get it out. Yeah.
yeah. And what we do a really good job of with the age data is building a lead score to score the data so that we're trying to minimize the exposure of who we're calling and only focusing on calling people that hit the target CPA or that are going to buy. And then now making sure that regardless of whatever the opinion is, making sure the DNC is used. I think
Yeah.
that's the new rule of 90 days. We're going to implement the DNC. But I think age data is a huge source of revenue for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to have to be accepted. It's going to take a while for people to move toward the branded consent. The one thing that we've worked really hard on is building relationships with direct publishers so that we can introduce our clients to them so that we know what they're getting. We see the pages, we have proof of the pages, we're monitoring it, and we trust the source. I would think that if you're just buying age data files, it's kind of, today, especially today, it would be a wild, I don't even know, be kind of risky, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
100%. Yeah, risky and probably not really getting a whole lot out of it either, I don't know. But I wonder, it just made me think about this for a minute, but I wonder if, the a regulation towards, removing this age data, over time will actually help those companies that are doing the real time
yeah.
consent, leads that are coming right in real time. I wonder if it would sort of help boost that those companies, because now those that were relying on maybe some age data sources now really have to figure out how to make real time,
Right.
single consent data work.
It seems like they're gonna like cut it off at like the carrier, right? And that
Yeah,
whole, which look, my thing is if you're calling people and they find value in your phone call, it's a good ecosystem for us all. When you're taking an age list that you've bought through a broker that merged the list, that got it from a broker, that's
right.
in the broker, and it's been resold 100 times, and you're gonna try to like cross sell it, then is that really, that seems like it's kind of fueling the issue. And so the
100%.
more that behavior is cut out, the better it is for our industry. And I think connectivity rates will just naturally increase because,
Yeah.
they're not having to be so aggressive at fighting,
Yeah.
these bad actors.
Yep. 100%. And that's goes back to what I was saying earlier. We've got a lot of companies that are doing the right thing, making a certain amount of calls, not being over intrusive, calling people that ask them to be called. And then you've got these other people that are just really screwing it up for everybody, making it horrible experience for people. That's why they don't pick up the phone, all these sorts of things. And so I'm glad to see things really start to clean up.
Yeah.
And I think those companies, there will be an adjustment for a lot of companies. And then for some, there will be none because they're doing it one way already, I'm just to bring back to the carrier side of things. So they're starting to look at consent a lot stronger now. It sounds like, or single consent. How do they plan to remediate that, like those issues? So when they contact someone like you,
So,
ask for all those things, are they then clearing that number? Like when they confirm that, hey, this actually is all legit. How are they sort of helping those that are fully in
yeah.
compliance to what they want to be able to contact more people correctly?
Again, I only know my world, right? So I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know
But have
anyone
they
else's
said
world.
anything
Am I?
about that?
Yeah, and I'm not an
Yeah.
expert to
No.
anything, and sometimes I'm really slow at catching on to what they're trying to tell me. So I'm very fortunate at Twilio to have a technical account manager and to have a good team around that is, I think, ahead. Well, not think. I know they're ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah.
Or at least in the world that I'm working in the world that I can share with my clients, and the way that we can develop the software in the future. They're giving us a roadmap, at least in
Mhm.
their opinion, from their conversations. They're not saying like today it can't work, right? In this particular case, I laid out a remediation plan to once I sort of clicked on me what the issue was, right? Because I
Yeah.
was so busy defending my position, right? Like I'm right, this is legal. It took me a while to kind of understand their position. And then once I understood their position, it made sense. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's very logical. So I just, what we did was we put together a remediation plan. We immediately did an implementation of one change that we were able to do. It was a great click of a button. And then we have a change that I laid out a week migration for, and they're giving us the time. I'm hoping they're going to give us the time to do that. I believe that they are. But I'm actually glad that they brought this to my attention. I'm actually glad that there was this challenge because it's going to make this better for the customer. It's going to make us better in the ecosystem, out there. So, um, the good thing about like how do we plan for it is these conversations that we're having, we're
Hmm.
having open, honest dialogue, and we're developing and we're communicating with our customers about where to go, but not just saying like you have to go do this. Like, hey, we also have this resource available to you, and we have this pool of publishers that you can work with, and we could start planning now for something that seems to be very inevitable. And then, if we're planning now and it's a year later, now we have a good pile of age data that's single consent, or at least on topic
Hmm.
to what you're doing. And I think that's kind of like my key takeaway of the benefits that of having these conversations that we have. As much as like I just would like to just hit the button and make all the money, and make all the money. Like
Yeah.
it's good to know where it's going and we can plan for it.
Yeah.
And we want to plan, code, and provide and build good relationships with vendors. So if there's any people out there working with direct publishers that want to do things the right way, that do want to do single consent, we want to test it and then be able to introduce our clients to using those services.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. What's interesting though, and I think associations like PACE or Consumer Consent Council or Reach, and I should have tagged those guys on this thing, but I didn't really know we are going to go into compliance so much. But I mean, they need to get some. Maybe they need to consider getting some of these carriers into the conversation as
Yep.
well. So obviously they've been focused, I think, and I don't have full transparency in all these organizations, but I think they've been focused on the regulators,
Mhm.
rightly so, rightly so. And then obviously the brands and then the lead generation companies and service providers. But I think I certainly have overlooked thinking about these carriers that are absolutely in full control over, contact rates. And then if they're basing this off of potential, regulations down the pike, and they're already implementing those things, I think it's probably pretty important for those associations to get them in the loop and try to work together on, okay, how do we make this all work for for the good of the consumer? Because it ultimately, I think the good of the consumer, trickles down to the good of the brand and the lead
Mhm.
generator and everybody. If the consumers, not being harassed and all this sort of stuff, it's gonna work out for everybody so much better. The brands are gonna get more sales out of it because people are picking up the phone. They're talking to the right people, all those sorts of things. And it's just much more scalable from there. But
I think maybe the only people that won't be happy is people that are selling, labor, because if you're just calling the right, I mean, in the ideal world, you're calling only people that want your product, right? And you're making sell.
yeah,
You just need less person. I guess you can sell more of your product and get more data. There
yeah,
you go. But
yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
who
I mean,
knows?
there's so much opportunity, whether it's
Yeah.
internationally or just nationally. There's a lot of opportunity for companies to grow and sell their products or services or whatever it is. But maybe the guys in the mortgage industry won't say that right now. But there's always opportunities. My point, and especially if you're doing it right.
That's an interesting. I mean, that would be really nice to hear if you were able to get like a compliance officer from the carriers to come to the show. That would be cool because
Yeah,
you're right. Everything that I see out there is about regulatory, but then you're on this phone call and it's like, well, yeah, that might be the law, but that's not what's going to be permitted. We're not going to permit off topic. Right now it was like this is off topic, and that was sort of the first big problem I had to overcome, and um and it would be interesting to hear, like, well, yeah, sure, the law says this, or they're going to argue about that, but this is what we're going to do. So at
yeah,
least give the industry time to plan,
yep.
you know?
We tried to pull together a session and couldn't get a couple carriers, but let me tell you, if you have a connection at Twilio and they'd be up for coming and talking about it, for 30, 40 minutes, we still
Yeah.
I can find a spot for them on
Okay.
stage.
Yeah,
And if
I
you
will.
want to moderate it, we're doing this live right here to this conversation. But I'm telling you, but if it's something, that if you have a connection there that they would want to come and sort of share some of their just
Yeah.
general thoughts on this, I would love it. It'd be great.
Well, I'll just put, Curtis on the spot because I think he's watching, so so I'll reach out to Curtis after this at Twilio and see,
Come
see
on,
what we
Curtis.
do. I think it would
Let's
be
go.
great. I think actually, I think it would be really great to hear at least their side. They're the ones also, talking to the carriers. So I think it's a great idea.
100%. Because at the end of the day, I really truly believe that most companies, in fact, I would say 99% of the companies that show up at Contact that
Hmm.
IO want to do things correctly, and they want to do it because it's better for them. They don't want to just one day be cut off or for no reason for not knowing something or whatever it is. They really just want to have a clear path to success or whatever it is. And right now, it's just kind of all over the place.
Well, I agree with you. Probably they don't want to feel like a spammer or have to act like a spammer. And I'm sure someone
Right.
doesn't want to be paying for I've heard some bills are like 45,000. I was almost blown away. I saw a bill that was like $45,000 for DIDs. Just like
Yeah.
that's insane.
It's
So
crazy.
I'm sure everyone would be like, please tell us, like,
Yeah.
how do we plan for the futures, and how do we stop acting this way besides just going to data score 100%. But
Yeah. One thought, have you heard about like the white labeling though of like numbers or something like that? Have you ever heard that? No.
not, I mean, are
Um,
you talking about like Haya and TNS and First Remind and all
well,
that?
yeah, well, I'm not sure about Hyatt, but like New Star, I think had something around like they work with the big carriers. They've worked with them for many, many years doing their caller ID stuff, and they
Mhm.
claim to have some alternative method to that actually gets them white labeled. I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't know. I just
No,
didn't know if you knew anything like that. But
no, I mean, I've the roads that I've heard. So I've had a few conversations. We're always kind of looking, for like what's
yeah,
out
for sure,
there.
of course, yeah,
And this one company was like, no, we have a direct relationship, and we kept working through their company because I was like, I don't think you can get to them except through one of the three, and but maybe, what do I know? Maybe New Star you know, um, has some backdoor. I mean, they do have a server at the White House. So,
yeah.
you should Google about the Russian spy, the Russian conspiracy, and TN. It's like, 'cause it's kind of a funny story, but anyways.
Yeah.
Topic.
Well, so David from Newstar just chimed in, on comments, and I wish I could bring him on this call right now for 2 seconds, but we actually have to wrap it up. But, yeah, maybe you can leave a comment, Dave, on what the heck I'm trying to talk about, and we can go back to it. But, yeah, it's really interesting, to see how people are trying to navigate through all this stuff and do the right thing. And I hope we get some clarity on that without too much collateral damage on the way.
Mhm.
And it would be super cool if a carrier like a Twilio would like to come.
Yeah.
I know it's a month away, but we can make it happen. Less than a month away. And we can get them on the main stage and just to talk about it. So See what you can do, man.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try.
But otherwise, yeah, I think it's really, really interesting topic, and we'll have to certainly do this again. What I want to do before we leave here, though, is provide a little bit of contact information about you. I mean, if anybody wants to reach out, obviously, I got your website up here, datascore.ai. Your email is brent@datascore.ai. I put it up here. And obviously they can reach out to you on LinkedIn. If they're watching on LinkedIn, you're tagged on this event, so they can just go to you and message you there as well. But any sort of final words before we
No,
take...
we'll see at Contact.io. I'm excited. Okay. Yeah. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff, man. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you there. And if anybody wants to continue the conversation, reach out to me or Brent. But until then, we will see you later. All right, signing off.
Thanks, Michael.